it's Thursday. So we're doing a somewhat ironically named mini theme this month of supersized September. Basically, I'm just going to release bigger versions of a couple of my patterns. Now, I let you guys vote, and overwhelmingly, you voted for the frog. So those are the mini versions. And here is the doubled size version that we are going to be making today. Now, I can't hold him as close to the camera as I normally would. He is approximately head-sized. But the frog isn't the only one we're going to do this month. And I've already made the other one we're going to do. And oh my God, guys, he's so cute. And it's a secret. Totally. Right, now, don't let the length of this video trick you. This is not a quick project. It took around 7 hours to film start to finish, which is more than double what a regular video would normally take me to do. So I don't recommend attempting to do this frog all in one sitting. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk tools and materials. So in order to make your giant frog today, you're going to need 8-ply 100% acrylic yarn in a couple of colors. Now this is the exact same type of yarn that we used to make our small frog. We're not using bulky or anything like that. So the colors you're going to need are at least one frog color. I've chosen to use 3 today because I want to put a little bit of a color differential on the feet, and then a little bit of black and a little bit of white to make his eyes, because frankly, I could not find safety eyes big enough for this guy. You're also going to need your 3.5mm hook, a pair of scissors, pins and needles, and a lot of stuffing. But that's it. So a written version of today's pattern will be sent out to my patrons and will also be made available on my Etsy, and I will leave links to both in the description down below for anybody who's interested. Though, guys, I know I've fallen a little behind in my paperwork again, so the Griffin pattern has gotten a little delayed, and I'm really sorry about that, but I should be all caught up by the end of the weekend. So, be careful what you wish for. Now, please forgive the two-toned nature of this guy. I ran out of the original color that I was using. So that is the difference doubling makes. So basically you end up with something that is twice as tall and twice as wide, and actually uses 8 times the amount of stuffing. So just to let you guys know, I won't be doing the color changes on him today. We are going to be making just a regular giant green frog. So we're going to start today by making his little head and body arrow. We start at the tip of the nose, and basically we work until we reach the butt, all as one piece there. Okay, so grab the main color you're going to be using for your frog. For me, I'm using this grassy green, and we're going to work that piece up now. Now, some of these rows do have kind of complex notation where you have multiple sets of brackets on a single row. I just wanted to remind you to just take things one step at a time. So we read our rows from left to right, and if you encounter a set of brackets, you repeat whatever's in that bracket the number of times on the outside of the bracket before moving to the next instruction in the row. The number in the brackets at the end of the row will tell you how many stitches you should have done and how many stitches are in the row at that point in time. I would encourage you to stop at the end of each row and count, and just make sure that you have the right number of stitches. Okay, so there we are at the end of row 17. I am just going to mark the next stitch on this row, and all that's going to do is show us which side of the frog is your top. It's going to make it a little bit easier later when we go to attach everything together. Now, in order to double the size of this pattern, I did, of course, refer to the same method that I used in my bigger video where I initially did a giant spider. So if you're interested in doing this to any of your own patterns, I will leave a link to that in the description down below. So there we are at the end of row 45. We have 3 rows to go, but we're going to stop and stuff it now. Now you want to stuff it until it reaches a relative squishiness. You want it holding its shape fairly firmly, but you don't want it stretched tight. You still want to be able to like pinch it and not have it be like stretched super, super thin. Just like so. Now, just on a side note, you probably can't even tell because I'm looking at it and I can't even tell. But around here, I lost a game of yarn chicken and I swapped to a completely different brand of yarn. Not even just a different ball of yarn or a different dye lot, a different brand of yarn. And the color matching is genuinely just spectacular. I don't know if you can even see a difference between the old color and the new color. So, that's pretty cool. We are now just going to carry on and finish closing off the butt of the frog. And finish off. So there is your finished frog body. And it's also how we turn 3 hours worth of work into about, what, minute and a half, 2 minutes of editing? Anywho, you'll note that we still have this tiny opening at the base of your frog, and we're just going to take the remaining tail and weave it through the front loops of all 6 remaining stitches. Like so. And then just insert your hook out through the center of your reverse magic ring there and tuck that end away inside. It'll be our little secret. So I still have my stitch marker inserted into row 18, just letting us know what side is the top of the frog, because otherwise it can be a little bit, I suppose if you can't really tell, it doesn't really matter, but it does matter to me because I did design one side as the top. Good squishy, good squish. So that is the top of our frog. And we're just going to place this whole piece off to one side for now. Okay, so with the head and body done, next up we're going to start working on his legs. So this is one of the changes that had to be made to the pattern when going from the small version to the large version, the toes. So on the small version, we could get away with folding over a triple crochet to just create sort of this little bobble. But on the larger version, that was never going to work. It was never going to stay proportionate. So instead, what I've chosen to do is create the toes as separate pieces, and then we join them in the round as we build up the foot. So what we're going to do next is make up his toes. So they start kind of at the very tip, and we're only working down to where they'll meet the foot. So because I'm going to give my little froggy, or my big froggy, yellow feet, I'm going to be using yellow for my toes. And these are really easy. All you do is a magic ring of 6. And then 4 rounds of 6 single crochet in each. So that is for 24 stitches in total. Like so. And then just finish off. So I'm going to tuck our starting tail down inside the toe, but otherwise we're not going to worry about stuffing this particular piece. We will, however, be stuffing the foot and leg later. So there is your first toe. Now you can choose to make all 12 that you'll need now because they're all made exactly the same for the front and back feet, or you can just make 3 to start our first foot. So for the front legs, what we do is we start at the sole of the foot and we work up a couple of rows to form our disc. We join our toes over 2 different rows. So 3 stitches to join in the first row and then 3 stitches to join in the next row. Then we narrow down to an ankle and just work up a tube for the leg. So we're going to start that now. Again, because I'm doing yellow feet on my frog, I'm going to keep working in my yellow. And I'm just going to work up the sole of that foot. Okay, so there is the sole of our foot. And in the next row, we're going to be attaching his toes. And there are our little piggies. So each of the toes should have 6 stitches left around the opening. And we're going to use 3 stitches to attach them in this row. And then we'll attach the other 3 stitches in the next row. So one thing that I've found, because I have tested this, is that it doesn't really matter which 3 stitches you choose to attach in which row. I've done it so that like I start in the final stitch that we do and use those 3 stitches first. I've done it so that like I've overlapped it, and I've done it so that I've used the other ones. It all turns out pretty much looking the same, so you don't need to worry too much about which stitches you're going to use to attach. So what I'm going to do is line up my first toe so that 3 of the stitches line up with the next 3 stitches of the sole of the foot. And then I'm just going to insert my hook through one of the stitches of the toe from the inside of the toe back to the outside, and then through the next available stitch on the sole of the foot with the correct side facing me. So that's the order you should skewer your pieces in. And then just work a single crochet. That's the first one, and we're going to do that 2 more times for this toe. So 1 stitch of the toe and 1 stitch of the foot, and single crochet, 1 stitch of the toe and 1 of the foot. There. So now you'll be able to see that that toe is attached along 3 single crochet, and it still has 3 stitches we haven't worked in yet. We're then going to work just a single crochet into the next stitch of the foot, like that. So that's going to be the little gap between our toes. We're going to grab our next toe and do the whole thing again. So lining up 3 stitches of the toe with the next 3 stitches of the foot, inserting your hook through both layers, and work 3 single crochet across. Once again, check that you have 3 stitches free on your toe and that you've attached it along 3 stitches, and then work a single crochet just into the foot. And then do the same thing for the final toe. So that is the 3 through the toe, and then 1 into the next stitch of the foot. So there we have our 3 toes attached. It's looking very rough at this point, but we're going to clean that all up in the next row. So first up, what we need to do is finish this row by just working 12 single crochet back around to the start, working into just the foot. And I'm very sorry about those planes going over. It's the thing about Australia, there's nothing for miles and miles and miles, and then you have a place like my apartment, which is next to a police station, a fire station, a train station, and an airport. There we go. So that is the end of row 5. So in the next row, we're going to finish attaching these toes. What I'm going to do is the next 3 stitches will be used to finish attaching this first toe. So I'm going to start by inserting my hook through the first available stitch on the toe and into the next available stitch on the foot. So you'll see that those are the 3 stitches we use to attach the first layer of the toe. And I'm inserting my hook through both a stitch of the toe and a stitch from the previous round, and work a single crochet. And we're going to do basically the same thing for the next 2 stitches as well. So insert your hook through one of the stitches from the toe and the next stitch on the foot. And for the final pair of stitches, and single crochet. So there is that toe fully attached. Now you're going to find that single crochet we did between the toes and work a single crochet into that. So there is that first toe. It's fully attached. It's looking much neater. And we're going to repeat that process for the next 2 toes as well. So 3 single crochet to work across the pairs of stitches. And then 1 single crochet in between each of the toes. And don't forget that final single crochet into the foot. And there we have our 3 toes all attached nicely. See how much neater that looks now? That is how I got around the triple crochet hack that I used for the original. So I think that it's a pretty good size up representation. I don't know, what do you guys think? And then from there, once again, we just work 12 single crochet around to get back to our starting point. So there we go. That is us at the end of row 6. So I'm just going to work 1 more row in my bright yellow before I change colors. Of course, that is completely optional for you. As we work to close off the front of the foot, but leave room for the leg to grow out of the back. Right, so I'm just going to change colors there, and I'm going to do a little bit of a buffer of pale yellow in between my bright yellow and my green, because I think it makes for a nicer transition. And now we're just going to work up the next 17 rows of this leg. You'll note that most of them are just 12 single crochet around, and that is just to build up that tube. And then we are just going to finish off. And there is your first front foot. Now we are going to stuff this piece. So you're going to stuff the foot very, very lightly, just so that it doesn't warp out of position. If you stuff it really, really full, it will balloon out and lose that flat froggy shape. So stuff it just very, very lightly. There we go. So I'm not going to put any more stuffing than that in there. And then we're going to stuff maybe 3/4 of the leg, just normally, so not too tight, not too lightly. And then we're going to leave the top quarter empty. Okay, so I've stuffed mine until there's like maybe 4 rows left, and I'm going to leave mine there. So there is our finished front leg. And we are going to need 3 of those. Well, there's our two front legs. We'll pop those to one side for a second. The back legs are exactly the same as the front legs up to row 18. And this is the starting point for the back leg. Now, if you need the instructions for those rows, I'll put them on the screen for you now. They'll be up there for maybe 5 or 10 seconds, so pause if you need them. So yeah, I've just reattached my green yarn, and basically from here, we're going to work up the back leg. So you may recall from the small frog that the back leg curves up and around, and we're going to do the same thing on the large frog. I'll show you this leg here. So as you can see here, it curves up and around. And basically what we do is we work up a regular tube. So this is kind of the same as the front leg that we've already seen. We're going to widen it out into this knee joint, and then by loading decreases along the back edge and increases along the front edge, we build the rest of that curve. We anchor this back part to the front part by stitching through the previous layer, which I'll obviously show when we get there, before closing it off at the back of the leg. So that's sort of quite a few structural elements going into it, but they're actually exactly the same, just sized up as the smaller frog. So this is one of those things where the technique actually translated to a larger size, which I thought was really interesting. So we're going to start by working the next 8 rows of our leg to build up to where we want to start our knee joint. So there we are at the end of row 26. That is the widening out into the knee joint that I was talking about. And at this point, we are going to stuff this the same way we stuffed the front leg. So lightly in the foot, fairly firmly in the leg, and then just leave this top bit empty for now. So just like that. So these next few rows are a little bit messy. So we're going to start working those increases along the back and decreases along the front to start curving the leg around into the knee. So that is the bend of the knee that we've made there. Okay, so in the next row, which will be row 34, what we're going to be doing is fastening this bit down to the leg to just really lock in the shape of that knee. So that row starts with 16 single crochet that we're just working around normally to get to where we want to start fastening our leg down. So there we go. You'll note that that brings us around to the back of the leg, which should be roughly off to one side of the center of the heel as well. Now, if you've made the smaller frog, you'll remember this process. The only thing that's really changing is that for the big frog, we're going to lock it down in 2 stitches instead of just the 1. So first up, what we're going to do is count up from our starting magic ring until we identify row 14. So I'm just marking it off to one side so it doesn't get in the way. And I'm pointing it down in a direction that won't require a blood sacrifice, because that's just not what we're doing at the moment. Frogs shouldn't need blood sacrifices. So then I'm going to fold the top of this leg down. This is kind of a complicated sort of move, but what we're going to basically do is fold it so that it stays straight up and down. Like you're basically folding it straight down along that center heel line. So you don't want it hanging out too much on either side. Take your active loop, folding it down to row 14, and just insert your hook through one of the stitches of row 14 that lines up with your bent over piece. So I've just done that there. I'm then going to maneuver my hook around and also insert it into the next stitch of our round and pull up a loop through both. And I'm just going to work a single crochet. So that's our first anchor point. I'm going to work 2 single crochet around the leg. So that's just through the leg stitches. And then we're going to do it again. So folding it down against the leg where it fits. Insert your hook around the post of one of the available stitches in R14 or R13, depending on where yours folds to. And then through the next 2 loops on the leg as well. And work our single crochet through both. Remove your marker pins, just for safety's sake. And before you go any further, check that your work from the front. See how the leg is folded straight down the middle, and you can see the thigh basically showing evenly on both sides. That's what you want, a nice straight leg. Side, I don't know if the top view is particularly helpful. So that is your leg anchored down to the calf. And so now we're just going to continue working around this opening here to build out the rest of the froggy thigh, the meat part, the drumstick, you know, that bit. Which starts by working 4 single crochet just to finish round 34. Just like that. So we're going to carry on and do the rest of that thigh now. So now with just 2 rows to go, we're going to stop and stuff our thigh. So as we finish stuffing this piece, you'll note we'll be able to work some stuffing up into that knee joint just to help round out that curve. And we're going to stuff the thigh relatively firmly as well. It is a structural piece, and so the stuffing's going to help it hold up the frog. So there is my froggy thigh, and I'm going to work the final 2 rows to close off this opening. And then we're just going to finish off. And once again, weave our tail through the remaining stitches and pull tight to close and tuck the end away. So there is our big froggy leg. Now, just because I think it's funny, the frog leg is the same size as the original frog and probably uses about the same amount of yarn. And we are, of course, going to need 2 of these as well. So there we go. So you'll note what I'm doing there is I'm just making sure to distribute the stuffing slightly out of this ankle joint by giving it a little bit of like a pinch and squish. And that's going to allow that foot to sit upright at the right angle. So this one here is kind of sitting a little bit loose at the moment. I'm going to pinch it and rummage it to redistribute that stuffing and then flatten it back out and it'll sit at the angle I want it to. So we have most of the pieces of our frog ready now. And as I was saying, relatively quick and easy. Well, the video is. The stitching is taking a really long time. The sun has risen and set since I started filming this project. But we actually have one final piece to make, and it's the final kind of adjustment I had to make between little frog and big frog. You might have guessed it already, but it's the, where did you get that hat? Oh my goodness, frogs in hats. I've been resisting this whole time putting a strawberry or a leaf on one of their heads and just trying to focus. It's the eyes. Now, I'm going to do the eyes slightly different to how they've been depicted on this big frog here. I don't have an example to show you at the moment. Here is an example of the finished eye we're going to be using today. So you'll note that we're not doing the little panel to help it attach to the head, and they are going to sit a little bit more nicely at the front than these ones do. So what we have here is a little bit of a white edge just because it helps give that adorability factor, and 2 little catch lights as well, which we do stitch on afterwards, so they are optional if you don't want to do them. So for this piece, we start in black in the center of the pupil and we work up this first little panel. We then edge it in white and then we swap to our green and finish building up sort of the eye socket bit. That hat just belongs to this frog. Look at that. I've never seen a creation so destined to wear a hat before in my life. Anywho, okay, so grab your black and we're going to start by working up the disc that is the pupil. Now, because this yarn is black, I acknowledge that you won't be able to really see much of what I'm doing on the screen. So I'm going to get through this part as quickly as I can. Just like that. Now in the final stitch of that black, we're going to change to our white. So I haven't actually shown how to do color changes yet in this video, so we're going to do that now. So first of all, we always change our colors in the last stitch before we want the new color to be active. So I'm going to start by frogging that final black stitch, and we're going to work our color change in that stitch instead. So how you do color changes is you insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop of your old color. So you'll have 2 colors of your old/existing color on your hook. Hold that out of the way. Grab a strand of the color you're changing to, which will be our white, and pinch it at the base of your stitch. Yarn over and pull through both of the loops on your hook. Now you'll note that your stitch is wibbly wobbly and not sitting very nicely. I don't know if you can see that in the black, but it is. And to fix that, we're just going to tug on our tails, push it down until it is sitting nicely. So what you may or may not be able to see there is we have a finished single crochet in our black and white is on our hook ready to go. So that's our color change done. So the next row is 24 back post single crochet. Now we haven't really messed around with post stitching yet in this pattern. Again, lots of new techniques coming in right in the last moments. So by default in crochet, we work through the loops that are on top of the stitch. So we've got 2 loops on top of the stitch, and that's normally where we would work our single crochets. For post stitching, we actually work around the stem of the stitch instead. And back post single crochet means we're going to work around that stem from the back to the back of the piece, and then pull up our loop around the post and finish our single crochet. Now, I'll admit that it's a little difficult to see because I am working with black yarn here, but I do show how to do this tutorial in a lot of my other videos as well. So if you're getting stuck, maybe just watch. My mind is a little bit blank right now, but I know that I definitely would have done it in the original frog video, would have had one. And so would a lot of others, like the Pegasus from a couple of weeks ago definitely would have had one, and that sort of thing. So that's 24 around. You might find that your piece is going a little bit concave. You just pop it out to make it go convex, which basically just means you want it bubbling outwards. So now we're going to go back to working in the loops, and work one row of 24 single crochet around in our white. So just like that. So you should be able to see just this little lip of white around the edge. So in the last stitch of that row, we're actually going to change to our green. So I'm just frogging that final stitch, and we're going to do another color change. So insert our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop of our white, hold it out of the way, grabbing a strand of green or your frog color if you're doing maybe a pink one for a strawberry frog. Pinch it at the base of the stitch, yarn over with it and pull through both loops, and then tug on your tails to tighten that stitch down. So there we have our finished single crochet in white with our green on our hook ready to go. So in our green, we're going to do 12 front post single crochet, and we've done back post, but we haven't done front post yet. So it's similar in theory. We're going to work around the post of our stitch, but because it's front post, we're going to insert our hook from the front of the stitch around the post and back to the front of the stitch. So where back post is worked from the inside, front post is worked from the outside. Yarn over, pull up a loop and complete the single crochet like so. So you should end up with the edge of your black, one visible white stitch, and then your green. And we're going to work 11 more of those around the edge. So there's our 12th one, and you'll note we're getting this just really nice, sharp distinction between our colors, which is lovely to see. Then if you look at the eye that we're making, you'll note that we've only got that white edge around half of it, and around the other half, our green is lining up with our black. So how we're actually going to do that is we're still working front post single crochet for the rest of this round, but instead of working around the posts from row 6, we're actually going to work around the posts from row 5 instead. So the main difference there is instead of inserting our hook in the gaps of the next stitch around, we're going to move up a row and insert our hook through the gaps of the previous round. And we're going to work 12 front post single crochet around those posts. Am I potentially overcomplicating this? Yes, but you gotta let me be me, guys. I have to overcomplicate something. So there we go. So you should have worked 24 green stitches in total, and those green stitches make up the round that we're going to work in now. So if you look at it from the side, you'll note that we have this little white edge on one bit, and then our black is meeting our green on the other side. And that's how we're making it sort of more of a cute custom eye, instead of just a big black blob on the side of the head. So we have 7 more rows to work in our green, just to finish working up the rest of this little eye socket. And we're going to do that now. Finishing off with a row of 24 front post single crochet around. And finish off. If you haven't already, you can just trim off your black and white as well. There's the base of our little eye. Now this might seem like a ridiculous piece, and it would be if we were just gonna like stick it on the side or even the top. It's just strange looking, all bubblied out like that. But what we're going to do is we have our white edge and our black edge, and on the black edge, we are just going to pinch it down. And essentially when you're looking straight down at it, you just want to see 1, 2, 3 rows of stitches and then a little bit of that 4th row. So that side will sit flat against the head, and this side here will have that width that we built in to help it stick out. So that's the actual shape it's going to be when it sits against the head. Now, we're just going to quickly make the 2 little optional catch lights. They are in 2 sizes. Both patterns will be on the screen right now. And we make both of them in white. So the first one is literally just a magic ring of 4. And then slip stitch into the first stitch that you did and finish off. So there is our little one, and then we have a larger one to do as well. So for the larger one, we magic ring 6 single crochet. And then we are just going to work an increase into the next 3 stitches. like so. We're then going to slip stitch into the next stitch and leave the final 2 stitches unworked. Finish off. Just going to tuck my finishing off tail, the underside of it. So there is our large catch light as well. So how you position those will be different on the left and the right. So what I have here is our right eye. And so this one here will be our left eye. So what we do is we place the big one as though he's cross-eyed. So like pointing towards each other like that. Carefully pinned so as to not stab yourself. Make sure you can see a little edge of black around the edge there. And then your smaller catch light should fit on the black, completely surrounded by the black at the top corner. You basically try and make sure that your 2 eyes mirror each other. So they shouldn't look exactly the same. They should look like the mirror image of each other. So that's roughly it. So we're actually going to start assembly now, and that's going to kick off with using a little of our white yarn. I'm going to sew these catch lights to their eye. So just like that, we have our eyes all ready to go. So now we're going to bring in all of our pieces, and they all barely fit on screen. And we're just going to pin everything in place. So I'm going to start with my eyes. So thanks to our handy marker, we know that this is the top of the head, which means we know that this is the front of the head. So front and top. So what we're going to do is mark a couple of rows and then line everything up between them. So for the eyes, mark a pin on either side of that 4th row. Then continuing to follow that edge around, so just around the side of the frog, we're going to count to row 16. So there, and you'll note that I've done this on the other side as well with this little green pin, which you may not be able to see on camera. Let me swap that out. And you'll see that I've done that on the other side as well. So we've got these pins, we've got blue, orange, through the middle point, and then blue and orange. So those are the 4 points that we're going to use to line up our eyes. So first up, identify your right eye. Pinch that edge back along the black side if it's not sitting flat. And you want to line that edge up with row 4. So the row that you're pinning to the head should be the 4th visible green row of your eye. That does mean that it's folded over slightly underneath. You've got a little bit of a lip there. So just like that on the side. Note that I've got it positioned so that the white edge of my eye is facing towards the back of the frog. And so my little catch lights are at the front, like he's looking at us. So then I'm going to hinge this forward. I'm holding those pins in place. You might need to do that as well. I'm going to hinge this forward. I'm going to grab that last row of front post stitching that we did. And I'm going to stretch that out to row 16 and pin that front post edge to it. So you'll see that it kind of forms this little, like, it concertinas it out. We want it really flat at the front and really wide at the back. So those are kind of our 2 main points of reference for the eye. I'm then just going to go around and pin the rest of that edge in place. So along this back edge, I'm going to scoop up that front post row with my pin, stretch it out as far as it can. I'm going to do the same thing on the underside there, scoop out as far as it can, and we'll put some stuffing in there as we sew. And then as I get closer to the front, we want it to sit a lot flatter. So I'll chuck a couple of extra pins in there too. So there is our first eyeball. I'm just going to pin this one in place now. So there we go, just like that. So there we have our eyes looking straight at us. It might be a little far forward. Okay guys, I filmed that whole section and then realized I didn't like the positioning of the eyes. So I've moved them, spent a good 10 minutes or so looking at it and just moving them around. I left that whole part in just because it did have a lot of good advice regarding the folding and the pinning of the front and the backs of them. But I have changed the alignments. So the front of them should now line up with row 7 and they're a little closer to the top of the head. And the back of them line up with row 20. So that is my final positioning for my eyes. So next up, we are going to pin on all of our legs. So unlike the smaller frog, for the larger frog, we start with our front legs. So conveniently, we can identify really easily where these go as well, because they basically just fit into this curve of the body between the head and the hips. So I'm lining the top edge of mine up approximately with row 20 and row 28, and I'm positioning it about halfway up. This is just a starting position once again. So I'm just going to roughly position this where I want it here and do the other one on the other side. And then there's a couple of things that you're going to want to take into account. So the first up is this frog pattern does lend itself to being in a very flat position, but if you want your frog to sit up more, you need to tilt your legs downwards at this point. And you should also pay attention to the rotation of your feet. So the ideal frog, in my opinion, has his feet slightly pointed towards each other instead of like they're kind of very rough on mine. So I'm going to adjust both of those things. So I have that rough position there. I'm going to move the stuffing around a little bit, and then I'm going to turn it so the toes are facing each other slightly. I'm going to pin it once to give it a pivot point, and then I'm going to rotate it back down to make a little bit more of an upright frog on this one here. I'm going to pin that top edge firmly in place. And then I'm also going to pin this leg far down the body as it actually makes contact. So there's my first leg, and I'm going to replicate that on the other side. Make sure that your legs both touch the ground when your frog is sitting. And mine is slightly twisted, so I'm going to just move my right leg down a little bit. Then I'm going to rotate the legs forward if I want them to be in a flatter position. So those are kind of the two main poses you can have with this frog. It's just a matter of deciding which one works best for you. How you do the eyes will also probably have a pretty big impact on that as well. Just because eyes like this, I personally prefer snap-on safety eyes, but as I mentioned, I couldn't really find any big enough for this particular project. So we had to wing it, and it means that I'm having a hard time warming up to them. Once again, check that they're even. Make sure your frog isn't tilted to one side or the other, or if he is, make sure you like it that way. And when you're happy, we will grab our back legs, our little drumsticks. And just like with the smaller frog, note we have our finishing off point, and then we have our finishing off points on our legs. So on the smaller one, we lined up those finishing off points so they basically touched. On this bigger one, just because the proportions are a little bit different, we're actually going to line that finishing off point up with 3 rows up from the frog butt. And it's just a matter of adjusting all of your legs till froggy's in a pose that you like. Remember to take your time with the pinning process, just because it's so much easier to pin it 15 times than it is to pin it, sew it, and realize you hate it, unpick everything, or learn to live with it, you know? Like, it's much easier to remove a pin than it is to unpick stitches. So he put up way more of a fight than I expected, and I guess it's just because I'm used to working on smaller creations. And with all those pins in place, we are going to just take some matching green yarn and sew that all on now. Right, so there is your finished froggy. I hope you had fun making him with me today. I am so excited for next week's video as well. Now, for anyone who's still watching, thank you for watching to the end of the video. You guys get to know what we're doing next week. Isn't he adorable? All right, bye.